Academic researchers quite often complain that policymakers ignore their work. At the same time, policymakers know that they could be more convincing if their arguments are evidence-based and reflect social reality as reported in academic research, so that they are different parties, but they have some common aims.
I believe that the whole problem of using the potential of research is that we have found ways to translate the global stock of knowledge that is available into locally relevant knowledge.
Mais il me semble que dans les sciences sociales, il faut éviter que toutes les recherches puissent être focalisées sur ce qu'on appelle les thèmes prioritaires. Ce qui n'est pas prioritaire aujourd'hui le sera dans 10 ans. Donc nous avons besoin de zones de recherche qui puissent être financées sans qu'il y ait un lien, comment dirais-je, immédiat par rapport à la solution politique.
The thing that I feel is a bit missing is that this is an area of academic study in its own right, research on research use. There's a lot of research on this.
We also look very specifically at attitudes and perceptions and how are they changing. And the basic premise of that is that people act on the basis of how they feel. People know that, exclusion could be around axes of ethnicity, race, place of residence, etc. What we emphasize on is that it's the intersection of these identities that's very important. So nobody is just a woman, because a woman is a very, very heterogeneous group of people. You're a woman, you could be an indigenous woman, you could be an indigenous woman if you're Bolivian, you could be an indigenous Quechua living in a certain area, and it's the multiplied effects of these identities that actually produces the exclusion, which is why interventions probably need to also take into account this multiplication.
For me, what is really interesting is that now in the development of regional strategy itself, we include, for instance, civil society. It's not an easy thing to do, because sometimes civil society and the national, the countries, they do have some level of friction, and especially in terms of access to services.
We started the program of empowering people, because really social inclusiveness is about empowering people, and it's about participation. And that will bring about equity in my books. Because if people know what they want, people have ownership, okay? And therefore, they would have a stake in making it work. You need to present it to the right people in the most simple terms, not use so many indicators so people are like, okay, what does that mean at the end of the day? And make sure you put in there a cost-effectiveness aspect, because people in the government have limited budgets and limited resources. So you have to make sure that this actually relates to that budget, so forth and so on. I really do believe that the MOST program is quite, trying to create a paradigm shift, and it in itself is a paradigm shift, okay? And it is innovative in the sense that it's trying to create that link. So many have tackled that, so many organizations have tackled that link before, but they failed, because they come at a point where they don't have the leverage. UNESCO has the leverage.
It's refreshing to hear about what's going on in other parts of the world. So this is, for me, the main value added, and you get to look a bit differently at what's happening in your part of the country. So maybe this is something that could be picked up by UNESCO and try to promote what it's spotting in one part of the world, and what's good practice to try to promote it in other parts.
As social scientists, we should have a pluralistic approach to our engagements with the various forms of evidence. We should have the skill set and the disposition that enables us to integrate different forms and sources and quality of evidence. If it's a broader category of social scientists more generally, then yes, I mean, part of our job should be to anticipate these, certainly the most major crises that we face. And UNESCO, at its best, is about trying to facilitate those kinds of conversations, and it'll be useful for policy to the extent it's able to actually add value to that existing conversation, to the extent that putting these different pieces together actually yields insights that wouldn't have been possible if those groups had just been left by themselves.
I think UNESCO's role is important for 3 ways. In fact, it's fundamental. First is, as an institution dedicated to scientific inquiry and to education, those are important. First, because this is ultimately a question, a scientific matter. We need to develop the concept, we need to develop tools to measure it, we need to evaluate it. That's a social science question that UNESCO is uniquely situated to do. The second is the issue of education. The one variable across all the countries that I'm familiar with, Latin America, education, has the greatest explanatory value in understanding the ability of humans to be able to rise above social mobility, which is ultimately the great lubricant, if you will, for social inclusion. And the third is, because of its global nature, I think UNESCO is very well suited.
The United Nations, including UNESCO, has got the ability to track the progress of the use of these indicators and the monitors, and also to continuously assist governments and other stakeholders. Of course, we cannot have a global tool that can be used everywhere. It will have to be modified according to the context of the user. For example, if we were to live here with a global tool, let's say a set of indicators, when I go back to Africa, I will have to modify that to suit the particular context of Africa. I believe the same with Latin America, the same with Asia. But just like the MDGs, something that is a global guiding framework on social inclusion will be very useful. If this tool will come from the United Nations, I believe that member states, as part of the United Nations, will pick it up and put it in practice.
If you do not think of social inclusion as a bottom line for sustainable development, if you don't think of social inclusion as the bottom line for poverty eradication, if you don't think of social inclusion as the bottom line for constructing and maintaining peace, then we are out of business.